Like, well, okay, well, good morning. Welcome to my cough of the year. So sorry about that. Like, I was standing there thinking, just swallow. And, you just can't stop that cough, and there it is. So what a better person to happen to me. I just go with it. So, hey, well, good morning. Welcome to Cornerstone Chapel. Welcome if you're online. We are so glad that you joined us and are here today to just be a part of Cornerstone Chapel's weekend service, and thank you again for being a part of it. My name is Pastor Rodney. I'm one of the assistant pastors here. Our lead pastor is Pastor Mark and Pastor Deb, and of course they are on sabbatical. If you're newer here or maybe haven't been here in a few weeks, we always have a weekly conversation with them about once a week. Either I do or Melanie has a conversation with them. And so they sent us a quick video this week just to say, hey, so check out this fast video that they sent us.
Hey, Cornerstone family. Mark and Deb here with our first sabbatical update. Just wanted to say hello to everybody.
Hi, everyone. We miss you so much, but we are having a great start to our sabbatical. God has been giving us some much-needed, really good rest, and He's been speaking to our hearts, and it's been really good so far.
Yep, doing a lot of reading of books, and I did an online course already, finished that up. So yeah, man, we're doing good, getting rest, letting God fill our tanks. We're down here in Florida, so one of my good friends, many of you guys know Pastor Mark, we're attending his church, Bayside Community Church. We're going to Sunday services. We went to a Wednesday night worship service. They have a Dream Center, so we're going to be going to the Dream Center service this weekend. So we just wanted to check in and say hey to everybody. We love you guys. We miss you so much. Thank you guys so much for supporting us in this. And man, we just look forward to seeing you soon. But in the meantime, let's just continue to be a church on mission. God bless you guys. We love you.
Bye.
All right, so, well, that's Pastor Mark and Pastor Deb. They look a little more tan, but they're really not living on the beach every day, at least not, all 12 hours of it. So, but hey, we are so honored that, we have the privilege that they can just get away, step away. We have an amazing team here that's working together. I'm even looking forward to the next few weeks where our other pastors get to come up and present and talk to you and share their hearts with you about everything about Church on Mission. Pastor Nate will be up here. Pastor Mike Gardner's coming up. Melanie's going to be up here preaching one week. Nicholas Acevedo. And so we have some great pastors that are going to come up here and just share their hearts with you. And honestly, I'm looking forward to a couple of those weeks where I can be on the other end and just sit down there and kind of receive as coming in. So just thank you. Pastor Mark and them did send a quick couple of pictures. I don't know if those probably already kind of popping through there. They got those little things down there called chameleons. And they are everywhere, And so I believe one might have even got into their house and they caught it and they're going to throw it out. But anyway, we're just so honored for them and so happy for them that they can just really just unplug, not be here, wondering what's going on. They always say, what's going on? And we're like, well, you're on sabbatical, so we can't tell you right now. So, we just kind of did that little bit of a filter there for them, which is great. But anyway, so let's just start into the weeks and to bring you up to where we are with Church on Mission. And when I talk about Church on Mission, it's really what God is doing in us and through us. And so when we really started to look at what we wanted to do over these 8 to 10 weeks, it's really we wanted to focus in on that. We wanted to focus like, man, what is God doing in us? And then eventually, what is He going to do through us and in our lives? And so if you remember the first week, Pastor Mark was here just before he left for sabbatical. He was here and he talked about the church's mission. Like, what is Cornerstone Chapel? What is Cornerstone Chapel's mission? What are we doing? What are we called to do? And then week 2 was my first week coming up, and it was all about struggles. And we looked at some different stories, but we looked specifically at Job, and not just the beginning of the ending of Job, but right in the middle of the Bible, right in the middle of the book of Job. And we talked about some of the struggles and complaints that Job had towards God. Not everything was going great. Not everything was, all parties and fun and everything else, celebrations. There were some real life struggles that really happened in their lives. And so we looked at those to see what God was doing in our lives and what we could learn from that. And then we learned and we saw David, another character of that week, and we looked at Psalms 13, which is believed to be one of David's darkest writings, where he wanted to know where God was at and all this stuff. Everything that was going on, he just felt like God didn't see him and didn't care anymore about him. And then we looked at, got another prophet that was the name of Jeremiah. And when we looked at Jeremiah, we saw the same thing. He's like, why is all the wicked being blessed and I'm not getting anything? You know, what is going on here, God? And so we saw this struggle going on. But then we saw Luke 22 come into play at the end of that sermon. And it says this, it says, Simon, 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 Satan has asked to sift all of you like wheat. And my prayer for you, what I have prayed for you, is that your faith will not fail, and that when you return to me, you will strengthen your brothers, which kind of brings us back around to church on mission, because it was being sifted like wheat. Everything he was doing in us was being turned back around to everything God could do through us. And then we moved on to week 3. And when we got to week 3, I felt like God was really telling us, okay, we need to deal with some bitterness a little bit. And so when we get through the struggles, we came to the bitterness. And so we talked about Mara, this place called Mara out of Exodus. And it was bitter waters. And what we found that is that bitterness was really taking us back to whatever our struggles were back in the first week. And every time we came into bitterness, sometimes we often thought about all these hurts and pains and things that we went through. And so it kept reminding us of our past. And so we saw these things starting to happen. And then we saw that, it's okay to be bitter a little bit. You just can't camp there. You can't stay there. You got to get through it. You got to move beyond the bitterness and forgive and move on and get to a place called Elim, which was, the palm trees and the wells. 70 palm trees and 12 wells. And so you see that God really wants you to move on. And then we started to talk about a woman by the name of Naomi. And Naomi was really, her name meant beautiful. But we saw that her name, when she came back to Bethlehem, was no longer beautiful. She didn't want to be called beautiful. She wanted to be called Mara, which is bitter. And that was because of all the 10 years of struggles that she dealt with out in the desert, where she had lost everything. Her husband was killed. Her sons died. And all she had was she didn't have anything really, except to go back to Bethlehem. And then we saw this thing called a guardian redeemer come into play. And this guardian redeemer was one that restored her. And we looked at what a guardian redeemer really is, and we saw this guy by the name of Boaz. And then during Boaz, he was the guardian redeemer for Naomi. And we saw this restoration in Naomi starting to happen. And as this started to happen, her heart started to soften. And as her heart started to soften, things in her life started to change, because she was moving away from the bitterness and over to the joys of life of what God had done for her. And as soon as we saw that, then things started to change. Ruth gave her a son by name Obed. Obed, Naomi raised and suddenly became the father of Jesse, who became the father of David, which put her back into the lineage of Christ. And then Jesus became the ultimate guardian redeemer for all of us as soon as he went on the cross and died for each and every one of our sins. And then that brings us to this week. And I know that, the last couple of weeks has been a little heavy. I totally get that. I understand. So this week I wanted to lighten things up a little bit. Maybe have a little more fun up on the platform, I don't want to be heavy all the time and be like, man, Rodney gets up there and depresses me when I walk out of the building every time. So I'm going to have a little fun with things today. And today I'm calling it, What's the Plan? Have you ever asked yourself, what's the plan? And you wonder and think like, man, God, give me the plan, give me the details, what's going on. But see, what I really believe is that when we deal with our struggles and when we deal with our bitterness, God is drawing something out of us that shouldn't be there, that's no good for us. But now, since he has drawn something out, he's got to put something back in. And so what he's going to put back in is so much better than what he took out. And we see this movement starting to move forward in this process with God and walking with God. And now it's like, what is God really doing in us and getting us prepared to do for us and through us? And so we're going to add some stuff today. Be a little positive and, add some stuff to our lives and see what God has going on. And so we're going to move right to Judges 13. And as you guys are moving there, I'm just going to pray real quick before we jump into the word. Jesus, I just want to thank you for today, Lord. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to be here and just worship you and love you, Lord. Thank you for just changing our lives over these last few weeks, Lord. But today, Lord, start something new in us. Prepare our hearts for something new, Lord. Excite us about what is happening in us and through us, Lord. Open our ears and our hearts, Lord, just to hear and receive everything that you have for us. Keep us humble to hear and understand those things, Lord, that this is all about you. In Jesus' name, amen. So Judges 13, verses 1 through 5. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, so that the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. You know, when I read that, I want to sometimes go back into the Bible, and I want to see how many times God actually delivered Israel, not into something good, but into something bad. You know, we always look at the celebrations. God delivered them from this, you know. But then you read something like this and says, oh, they did the evil and God just delivered them into something else and to try to bring them back. But let's just keep going. A certain man of Zorah named Manoah from the clan of the Danites had a wife who was childless, unable to give birth. The angel of the Lord appeared to her and said, you are barren and childless, but you are going to become pregnant and give birth to a son. Now see to it that you drink no wine or other fermented drink, and that you do not eat anything unclean. You will become pregnant and have a son whose head is never to be touched by a razor, because the boy is to be a Nazarite, dedicated to God from the womb. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines. Have you ever asked God, like, what's the plan? Have you ever sat back and just say, God, what are you doing? What's the plan? I don't quite understand what's going on. You know, all of those type of things that we look at. And yet we look at these things when we say, what's the plan? I think that we can go a little deeper than just what's the plan. And we can start to look at 4 perspectives, 4 things that help us to understand the plan. And then I'm going to wrap it all up with one thing that just ties it all together at the very end, that all 4 of these perspectives have together. Now, when we're talking about this, we see a woman who is childless and barren and childless, has no children. God is an angel of the Lord, angel of God appears to her and says, hey, you're going to have a child and you're to raise him as a Nazarite. Now, if you ever want to know what being raised as a Nazarite or as a priest of a Nazarite is, read Numbers 20 or 21, because it lays it out for you, everything you can do. You can't be around dead things. You can't eat unclean foods, no drinking of wine and alcohols, no cutting of the hair, no razors can touch your head. You know, I mean, it almost reminds me that, you know, as a Nazarite, you might look like, when you get to about 40 years of it, you might look like the it from the Addams Family. You know what I'm saying? Like, your hair is just long, you can't cut your hair, you can't shave, and for like a guy like me, I'd probably, you know, I don't grow facial hair, so it'd probably be really still short after 40 years, but for some guys, you know, it could be long. But anyway, you can check and see all of the dedication that comes from being raised as a Nazarite. And so God presents to the woman, she's been through a struggle. Now, if you think that she hasn't been through a struggle, she's been through some struggles and bitterness. Because in biblical times, if you did not bear children for your husband or for your family, you were often looked down on harshly. Sometimes you were even told that you must have sin in your life and you must have done something against God, because what other reason would you not have children? You know, and so she's struggling with what's going on inside of her. She just doesn't quite understand the plan. And then the perspective comes up and it says this. Let's keep reading. It says that perspective number 1, I'm all in, no questions asked. See, God is getting ready to birth something in her. God has given her a passion. God has given her a dream. God has given her a vision by presenting to her that you are now going to be pregnant and have a son. And so something inside of her is starting to dwell up. Something is starting to excite her because something new is beginning to happen. She's gotten through the struggles. Now something new is happening. And she's like, oh, Something new is getting ready to happen. God just told me something new is going to happen. And then let's continue to see what's going on. Then the woman went to her husband and told him, "A man of God came to me. He looked like an angel of God, very awesome." Why does God have to send a very awesome angel to talk to the woman to say she's going to be impregnated and have a child? Like, that's just one of those things, like, I have to quite understand that, because if I was the husband and my wife came back and said, "Hey, I've never been able to have birth, but this really awesome looking guy just came to me and said, I'm going to get pregnant," them's like fighting words, like, oh no, like, who is this? But that's what happens. She said, "He's very awesome. I didn't ask him where he came from. He didn't tell me his name, but he said to me, 'You will become pregnant and have a son. Now then, drink no wine or other fermented drink, and do not eat anything unclean, because the boy will be a Nazarite of God from the womb until the day of his death.'" I'm all in. I'm all in. No questions asked. Here's a woman, okay, now she goes, she's told by an angel of God that this is going to happen, and she doesn't ask details. Now, I'm going to just give you my perspective, because if I ever have a conversation with my wife and don't give details, there's a problem, because I'm just like, well, this is what they said, and Wendy's always, but what's the details? So she doesn't even ask the details. She is so excited, so happy, so thankful for what God is going to do in her. She doesn't even care about the details. Who cares what's going to happen? Have you ever had that in your life where you're so excited that something new is going to happen? Maybe it's a new job. You don't care how you got it. You just got it. Maybe something great has happened and you're just like, I have no clue. I have no idea, but I'm so super excited, and you have no idea what's going to happen, but you're just going to trust and have faith and follow God, and you're going for it. That's what she's like. She's like, look, I don't care about all the details. God made a promise to me, and I'm going to hold him to the promise. I'm going to have a son, and I'm going to raise him as a Nazarite. No questions asked, period. Hear the excitement? Let's keep going and see where this goes. Then Manoah prayed to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I beg you to let the man of God you sent to us come again to teach us how to bring up the boy who is to be born." Perspective number 2. I'm all in, but I need more details. Now here it is, a woman, his wife, runs to him and says, "I'm going to be impregnated." And he's like, details, please. Like, how is this going to happen? Like, I don't quite understand. Like, I don't know if they explained those things back in the biblical times or how it works. But he's like, I'm not quite sure. Like, have you ever done that? Like, like God puts a burning in you for something, a passion for something. Maybe it's a passion for a new business or a company. God can use businesses and companies for the kingdom just as well as he cannot. And those are all things. But he dwells something up. He burns something inside of you. And you're like, God, well, that's great, but could you give me a little more details? Could you throw me a nugget here, because I'm not quite sure how this is going to work? And it's funny that God flips this, because the woman in our day and age would probably be the one wanting all the details. She's ready to go. And Manoah is on the other end. He's like, well, I'm ready to go, but I need God to give me more details about the plan, because I don't quite understand the plan. And he's like, God, you got to give me, pardon your servant, Lord, but could you send that guy back to me and let me know? Watch what happens. So God heard Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman while she was out in the field. But her husband, Manoah, was not with her. The woman hurried to tell her husband, "He's here, the man who appeared to me the other day." Manoah got up, followed his wife. When he came to the man, he said, "Are you the man who talked to my wife?" "I am," he said. So Manoah asked him, "When your words are fulfilled, what is it to be the rule that governs the boy's life and work?" The angel of the Lord answered, "Your wife must do all that I have told her. It's funny because God in this instance gives the same vision, the same direction, the same promise as he did in the very same fashion he did in the original state. You see that? Because he said, God, can you tell me, where did the angel of God go? You just didn't come in because God said, I heard Manoah. God heard Manoah, but God went back to the original plan where he given it the first time. This is what you're to do. Went to his wife and fulfilled him. And Manoah's over here like, well, that is not details. And I need some details. And he's like, you have everything you need to know. You have everything you need to know. This is what you're to do. You raise the boy, and he'll save Israel. And yet he doesn't understand. No details given. And it makes me, when you talk about details, I love always giving stories of my family and my kids because I can laugh about them now that I've been through them, And it just kind of reminds me, when I hit about 40 years old, maybe 42, somewhere in there, I finally figured out that, man, I have become a dad. And you want to know how I became a dad? Like how I knew it? Like I've been a dad, but I got to embarrass my kids, and it felt good. See, what I'm saying? Like, you've made it to fatherhood when you can embarrass your kids and they know it, So my kids, I don't know, I think it's great. I think it's the best thing ever. I feel so good about it. There's those times in your life when you can just do something and just be like, dude, this is going to be so great and this is going to be fun. And so I think about those things, like the one time my son brought his girlfriend home. They are now married. She's now my daughter-in-law, and we love her to death, But the first time that she came to the house, and they brought her in, and they introduced, and she was kind of shy, quiet, wasn't saying a whole lot to me. But I was like, oh, game on. I just looked right at her, and I was like, what are your intentions with my son? Because it's usually the other way around. You're usually asked that of the guy of the girl, and I'm like, whoa, what's your intentions, And she really didn't have a whole lot to say because my son was like, let's get out of here now before it gets worse, But it's like those moments where you can just give those embarrassing things, And then I think about, like, my daughter, Megan, like, she does not like me picking her up from school anymore. It used to be the greatest thing ever. I could go pick her up at school, be in the line. But now I've figured out that if you beep the horn and you get out and you wave and yell her name, awesome. Like, she puts her head down like, that's just my dad. And so they've come to this understanding that my dad is just going to flat out embarrass me. And this is how they introduce me to their new friends now. Hey, this is my dad. He has no filter. Don't pay any attention to him because he's going to embarrass himself. Let's go. And then they want to run. But in the whole mix of just, having some great times with my kids and just, having some dad moments, just crazy dad moments, there are those moments where, we wanted to spend some time with our kids, me and Wendy did. And we were at camp. And when we do camp, we give all we have for camp, because we love camp that much. And what happens is that we pretty much give our summers up. We don't have summer vacations with them a lot. But this one time we said, hey, let's plan vacation while we're here at camp, waiting for all the kids to arrive. And then let's go back and just tell them we're going on vacation. We're just not going to tell them where we go. We're just going to go. And so we thought that was like a great idea. We're like, this is perfect. So while we're waiting for people to show up, we book vacation. We're going to go to Hershey, PA, because we love roller coasters and we love amusement parks, and my mother-in-law loves chocolate, right? So we're going to take her with us, and we're going to take her favorite place, Hershey's. And so we get out there, we get home. Wendy says, hey, pack your clothes. This is what you need to bring. We're going on vacation. And they're like, well, where are we going? And she's like, you don't need to know. We're just going on vacation. Well, no, I need to know. And she's like, here's what you need: a swimming suit, some shorts, tennis shoes, some underwear, all the typical stuff you tell them. Put it in the suitcase, we're going. The whole 5 hours that we're in the car, driving to Hershey, PA, all they could say was like, where are we going? What are we doing? Where's the this whole time, it was just like torture on all of us. It was torture on us because I was tired of hearing the question, but it was torture on them because they didn't know they were going. But then when we got to where we were going, it was the greatest thing ever. They didn't even think about it. Do you think about our journey sometimes with Christ that way? Like God gives you a passion, a burning for something, and he's like, hey, just go there. And you're like, God, just a little more detail might be nice. Just give me a little more, God. And God's like, no, trust me, have faith in me, just go. And you're like, but just a little more would be nice. That's where Manoah's at. Manoah's like, look, I'll do it. I'm all in. Just give me some more details. And God says, I've given you all the details you're going to get. Now trust me and go do what you're supposed to do. You see the difference between that? It's amazing how those things work when we start to look at those things. And then if you remember, I always tell you that I love looking for patterns in the Bible. It's just my mind. I'm not quite sure why. But we're going to jump back a little bit to Judges 6. And I'm going to bring you up to speed on another guy in the Bible that we're going to see another pattern come out of, another perspective, by the name of Gideon. Now, if you don't know a lot about Gideon is from a clan, Israel. He's not really strong. He's one of the weakest ones. But every year, every time they would harvest, the Midianites would come and take everything from them because they felt like it was they ruled over them, and they were going to take their stuff. So we come to a point where Gideon, I think we get Gideon and Midian all messed up, but Gideon is in a wine press trying to hide with what's going on because they're coming to take all the food and crops and everything that they had made over the time. And watch what happens in Judges 6. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. I'm going to give you some details about Gideon in just a moment, but he definitely wasn't a warrior, not by his perspective. And then it brings us to perspective number 3. I am all in, but I'm going to try to talk myself out of it. Like, have you ever, thought like God's giving you a vision or a dream or a passion about something, and you're going to, okay, I'm all in, but in the meantime, I'm going to do everything I can not to be all in. I'm going to ask as many people as I can, do whatever I can do, not to make myself all in. And I'm going to find a way to get out of it because I'm not sure that I'm there yet. Because God had called him a warrior, and he didn't see himself as a warrior. He saw himself as something else. But watch what happens. Judges 6:13, it says that, "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replied, "but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestor told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?'" All right, so here's Gideon. He's being told that he's a warrior. Now he's coming back and saying, "Pardon me, Lord, excuse me for a moment. Excuse me, but if you were with us, where were you at in all this mess?" There's the struggle. There's the struggle that we talked about 2 weeks ago. He's saying, where were you when all of this was going back in and happening and we were enslaved again? Where were you? And God's like, "Well, I've been in the same place always. Where are you?" And he's like, "I just don't get it. I'm struggling with you, God, that I'm in this position again. Where are you? What's the plan? I'm not a warrior." He's trying to talk himself out of it. Next verse says, "But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." Here's the bitterness. Remember, we talked about bitterness. "Where are you in all of this, Lord? And you've abandoned us." Bitterness. He's struggling with it where you're at because now we're enslaved to Midian. Now I'm struggling. Where are you at? Because you have abandoned us. And now you're taking me right back to my struggle. The two things that happened over the last 2 weeks that we talked about, the bitterness and the struggle. Gideon's going through it. Next verse says, "The Lord turned to him and said, 'Go in the strength that you have and save Israel out of the Midian's hands. Am I not sending you?' 'Pardon me, Lord,' Gideon replied, 'but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family.'" Gideon's trying to talk himself out of it. He's trying to find a way to get out of it. Pardon me, Lord, but am I not the weakest? Do I not fit? Cannot do this? Like he's saying everything that he's not. I'm not a warrior. I'm not this person. I can't do that. I've never done that before. Why are you asking me to do it? Go ask somebody else to do it. You ever been in that situation? Like, God, I know this way, but I'm not feeling it right now. Not feeling it right now. So you might want to go find somebody else because I just don't feel like I'm the right person for the job. You ever hear that or do that? I'm not the right person for the job. If God gives you the vision and the passion and the desire, don't you think he's capable of filling in all those inadequacies to make you the right person for the job? Don't you think he'll give you everything you need to do that? And yet we try to talk ourselves out of it. God, I can't go talk to my neighbor, man. They're messed up. Oh, man, what a messy life they have. I don't even know what to say to them. You know? God, I've never been through a broken marriage. I can't go talk to them. I can't do that. Well, you can walk with people, right? You can journey with them. You can do something. And you see this fighting that's going on inside of Gideon, and he's just like, I'm just not the right person. And then 16 says, the Lord answered, I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive. And then God's coming back around, and now he's saying, you are the right person. I will be with you. I am sending you. I will go ahead of you. You will strike down all of this because of the strength that God is giving you to do it. It starts to change that perspective. The way we look at things starts to change. The way we look at those things. But Gideon's not done yet. 17 says, Gideon replied, if now I have found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that it is really you talking to me. Please do not go away until I come back and bring my offerings and set it before you. And the Lord said, I will wait until you return. Now Gideon's trying to test God. You ever go through that part of it? You ever think you're an inadequate? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to test just to make sure this is God. I'm feeling this, but I'm going to have a few people. I'm going to get some confirmation going on in my life. And I think confirmation is great. I think it's perfect. Everybody should have confirmation on things. But I think Gideon takes it a little far because he's like, oh, God, if you stay here while I go get the offering, and when I return, if you're still here, then I'll know it's you. What do you think, God? God stays there and waits for him to come back. But that's not even enough. It's like, okay, that's not enough. Look where he goes. Gideon says to God, if you save Israel by my hand as you have promised, look, I will place a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece and all the ground is dry, then I will know that you will save Israel by my hand as you said. And that is what happened. Gideon rose early the next day. He squeezed the fleece and wrung it out with the dew, a bowl full of water. Then Gideon said, hey, don't be angry with me, God. Don't be angry with me. Let me just, one more request. Allow me one more test with the fleece, but this time make the fleece dry, and let the ground be covered with dew. That night God did so. Only the fleece was dry. All the ground was covered with dew. I mean, come on. I mean, we want confirmation in our lives. We want things to happen, and God gives us all these confirmations, and we do everything we can to discredit the confirmation. You know that? Like, okay, God, I know, but I don't know that person really well, and so I'm not going to listen to that one. Do you give me another test? Give me another clue. And then God presents you with that. And you're like, ooh, I don't know. That guy's got a pretty messed up life. Like, I don't know. Give me another one. And you keep doing this with God. And you keep doing this with God. And then as soon as one person, trust me, one person says, oh, that's not what you're supposed to do. Man, you'll hold on to that in a second. because that's what you were searching for. You were searching for a way out, and you think God just gave you a way out. And you're like, ooh, that's it right there. Now I don't have to go do it. And yet you had 10 people ahead of you that spoke into your life, talked to you about your passion, gave you God's dream, gave you God's vision for your life, gave you those things that you're supposed to do, and yet you wouldn't listen to them, and you try to find a way to get out of it. I'm all in, but I'm going to try to talk myself out of it. And you try to talk yourself out of it. And if you don't know the end of Gideon's story, Gideon did go. He did fight the warrior. And I think there might even have been a little bit more in there because God dwindled his army down to 300 people. And he says, if you conquer him with 300 people, then you'll know it was God's hands that did it. But regardless, I think that even in the struggle of God dwindling the army down to 300, he might have still been testing God a little bit to say, 300 people? Like, what is this? Like, I don't even know how to swing a sword, and you want me to go fight a whole nation with just 300 men? That's the plan. And he has to learn how to do this. And he has to learn how to have something called faith and trust. But then I think there's a little bit inside of him that is a little scared, a little fearful, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. And I think that brings us to another perspective. And we're going to jump back this time to Judges 14. And if you don't know who I was talking about when we were reading Judges 13, it was Samson. Samson was the son that Manoah and his wife were going to give birth to. And God had made that promise that Samson would be raised as a Nazirite and would free Israel from the hands of the Philistines. But then there's this other thing that comes along, this little bit of scaredness, this little bit of fear, and it brings me to perspective number 4. And this is what it is. I'm all in, but God help me not to mess it up. You know what I'm saying? Like, all right, I'm going to be all in, God, but I definitely don't know what I'm doing here, and I'm liable to mess this thing up. And that becomes a serious thing when we start to think about, man, don't let me mess this thing up. Like, do we really think that our God is so small that if we made a mistake somewhere, he wouldn't be able to fix it? Do we put God in that perspective of like he's below us and he wouldn't be able to, make a quick adjustment on the fly to fix everything that's going on that we might have messed up? But watch what happens. Look what happens. Samson went down to Timnah and saw there a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. His father and mother replied, isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives or among all our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife? But Samson said to his father, get her for me. She's the right one for me. His parents did not know that this was from the Lord, who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines, for at that time they were ruling over Israel. Do you think that Manoah, knowing how he raised Samson, knew he shouldn't really marry a Philistine woman, and yet they went to go get a Philistine woman for Samson? That God had forbidden that. It wasn't supposed to happen. They had to know it because the way they were raising him as a Nazirite. And yet, they didn't have all the details of the plans. They didn't know exactly how things were going to work out. They didn't know exactly what was going on, but they made in their human mind what they thought was the right choice. And somewhere in their minds, they might have thought, there's no evidence of this, but they might have thought, maybe this is the way God is going to deliver us out of the hands of the Philistines if a family comes together with the Philistines. But it wasn't. There was a struggle there. But God is so big that he took that little mistake, that little mishap, that little human side of us and corrected it. Because you see, if that wouldn't have happened, if Samson wouldn't have been raised as a Nazirite like he was supposed to, his parents wouldn't have given him off to a Philistine woman and betrothed him to the Philistine woman, then the next step was that there wouldn't have been a lion that he would have killed and ripped open. There wouldn't have been honey in the beast. Wouldn't have gave the Samson's poetry off to them to solve. The Philistines wouldn't have coaxed Samson's wife to give them the answer to the riddle. And because they gave him the answer to the riddle, now Samson owed 30 pieces of linen, so Samson had to go out and kill 30 Philistines to give 30 Philistines their linen to fulfill the promise that he said to them. And then on top of that, that made Samson mad, and then Samson went out, took 300 fox, ties their tail together, put a torch in their tail, sent them off into the fields and the grains of the Philistines to burn all of the fields, and then Philistines retaliate, and then Samson takes a donkey's jawbone and kills men, and then he gets captured by the Philistines, put into the temple where the pillar is, only to fulfill what God had said at the very beginning when he pushed the pillars out of the way, when he said, God, give me strength one more time. And in that moment, God had fulfilled a promise from a mistake, from something that happened, from a mess up. God had fulfilled exactly what he said, that out of his hands, Samson would deliver Israel. And there's something that all four of these things have, and it's called faith. See, sometimes we just think, I'm all in. Or I'm all in, give me some details. I'm all in, but I'm going to try to talk myself out of it. And I'm all in, but I might mess it up. But God says, look, all I need from you is faith the size of mustard seed, and I can move mountains. See, all he requires of you during this whole thing is just one little step. All he requires of you is just do something. All he requires of you is just move in the right direction of what he's called and what he's put a passion in your life over. He's taking you through the struggles. He's taking you through the bitterness. And now he says, I'm ready to do something through you. But I need you to take a step. I need you to take one step for me. You take one step for me and I can move mountains for you. See, we look at Peter's life and we think of how great Peter's life really is, but there's one story that always amazes me. And it's when Peter walked on water. And what really amazes me about that is that there was 11 other guys in the boat that never got out of the water or never got out of the boat. And I think that when Peter took a few steps, however many steps he took, and he sunk, I think all they saw was him failing. I think all they saw was, Peter, you're wet and you're sinking, and they're trying to drag him back into the boat. But Jesus on the other end, on the other side of the water, was like, but he took a step of faith. And now, he's the only one that's ever walked on water besides Jesus. Now, Peter has walked on water. And I think Peter swims his way back to the boat. His friends are probably laughing at him because he's all wet. And I think Peter just comes out of it and just says, but I walked on water. All because he had a little bit of faith to do what God's called him to do, to step out of the boat and do something new. Then we talk about this story forever. I mean, it's mentioned many and many times in many sermons of just a little bit of faith. And where has God called you in that? What has God called you to do? What is your passion? What is your desire? What do you think God has planted inside of you? What is he getting ready to birth out of you? Now that he's dealt with the struggles and the bitterness, man, something miraculous is getting ready to be birthed. Something miraculous that could save people, could save a kingdom, could change the world. All if you would just take a little step. Just a little step.